Welcome to our latest Leaders in Housing Counseling call. We're glad you're on the call, and there's been a lot of interest and activity over the last 24 hours about the call. So we're glad that people are engaged and telling us what they think. We're going to do a pretty rapid fire. We're going to cover a lot of ground. There's lots of issues that have risen in the last 2 weeks and progress reports that we want to do. So we're going to try to run through a lot of high quality information in a small space of time, and try to keep the call within the hour. We might go a little bit over, especially if there are questions and people have some thoughts, but we'll do our best to keep it within the hour. And the call today, we're going to do the latest on the federal funding. A lot is happening there, and we're lining up a lot. We're going to talk about the client management systems, and this is the latest, so we'll get from David Young what the latest is on their survey that they're doing, and hopefully get a sense of what the release date is. And then there's also been a lot of important thinking about the data standardization, and this is the part where we're trying to figure out how, in a world where there are likely to be multiple client management systems, how we can create one data standard in the housing counseling community that would allow easy, whenever approved, transfer of information, so that you don't end up rekeying things, having to jump from program to program. And we also have a situation where we can transfer easily to reporting to HUD, to funders, and to lenders and servicers. So trying to figure out how to make that all work through MISMO, but there's been some progress here, and David will give us a good update on that as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about HCO, and I sent out 3 questions, and this is about the termination date of May 31st, and if we want to push for it to be longer, we'll do this pretty quickly. So we'll ask you to vote on the 3 questions we sent out earlier today, and would love to get your response. And we'll see how you respond, and if there's a strong response, we'll do a sign-on letter. More to come on that. And we're going to spend some time on an emerging issue around the Fair Housing Act. Fair Housing Act is there's an opportunity to expand the Fair Housing Act to include low-income people and veterans. This would be an important development if it can happen. There's been bipartisan support, so we have representatives from the National Fair Housing Alliance and from VAREP to talk to us about that and what their current thinking is. And then the last 20-25 minutes of the call we'll spend on another client management system, counseling Navigator, done by Alliance Credit Counseling. So you'll get a good feel for that, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions. We're also going to list all the new members who joined in the last year, so 40 new groups, and I'm thrilled. So we just thought we'd let you take a peek at who all has jumped on board. But it's pretty exciting to grow this much in year 6 of our work. Good. And with that note, we'll make a plug about membership at the end, and talk about the next calls coming up. But with that, let's get started. So, Melody, what's happening in the federal funding world?
Thank you, Bruce. So I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are happy that the government has reopened, at least until the end of next week. As you know, they had a stopgap measure that was to fund the government by February 15th, and currently conference committee negotiators are in talks to figure out how to keep the government funded beyond that, as well as to fund a border security plan, as President Trump has requested for Congress to do. We believe that they're on the cusp of a deal to fund the government by February 15th and beyond. But as we know, that this deal would include all 9 departments that were not funded during the shutdown, including HUD. And if they don't reach a deal by February 15th, they would trigger yet another government shutdown. There's really not much that groups or advocates can do at this point. It's kind of in the hands of the conference, but NHRC is monitoring the talks closely. What we're currently doing, however, is working behind the scenes, preparing for fiscal year 2020 appropriation season, which is likely to start in a few short weeks. We believe that the season will likely start in the beginning of March, perhaps March 11th. That's what we're hearing right now. And that's when the White House is expected to release their fiscal year 2020 budget proposal. We're currently working with different groups around the country, as well as staff in different THUD subcommittee offices in the House and Senate Appropriations to begin talks on how we can get members to support housing counseling. There's 3 ways that we hope lawmakers can support the program. Dear colleague letters, programmatic request letters, and then championing housing counseling is one of their priorities. And for those who aren't familiar with the 2 types of letters, a Dear Colleague letter is specifically a letter sent by one member of either house to all of their fellow members, usually describing a new bill and asking for co-sponsors or seeking to influence votes on an issue. The more signatures a member can collect for a Dear Colleague letter, the stronger their case to leadership or Appropriations Committee can be on supporting a bill. And so we're hoping that we can persuade different members of Congress, if not someone specifically on THUD subcommittee in the House and Senate, to sponsor a Dear Colleague letter and collect signatures. The second way we're proposing this is through a programmatic request letter. And this is just part of the annual federal budgeting process. All senators and representatives have the opportunity to submit programmatic appropriation request letters in which they ask the appropriation subcommittees of jurisdiction to include funding for their priorities. And we're hoping that we can get as many members as possible from both chambers to include housing counseling funding at $65 million in their programmatic request letter. They can be any member. It doesn't have to be a member of appropriations. And then finally, just being, a champion for housing counseling in the House or Senate, speaking on the issue, explaining its value to the housing economy and to communities overall. If you are interested in, advocating for housing counseling to your members of Congress, please reach me, email me. My email is on the screen, as you can see. We need to make the case. It's really, really important that we have groups supporting us on this. Anything from positive outcomes, success stories, best practices, why additional resources are needed, just helps us make the case. And we're happy to work with you on drafting support letters, scheduling meetings with your lawmaker, working with different groups and helping with the coalition on this. So please email me if you are interested. And we'll circulate an email after the webinar as well, explaining in more detail, if you like, how to get involved. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Bruce.
Excellent. So our magic number is 65 million that we're pushing for. We've been at 55 million. Looks like we may be just at 50 million this year in the budget that's being discussed right now. We're doing everything we can to bump that up, but the main thing is that in 2020, we would really like to come up with a much stronger number and start getting back on track in terms of funding. We have talked with leadership in the House, where they're very sympathetic, and we came in with a larger number, I'll just be honest with you, but they said realistically 65 million is a stretch, and we said good to stretch, we'll go with that. And so there'll be a lot more about this in the next few weeks. Melody has gotten teams of people already working on this in New Jersey, Missouri, California. There's plenty more room, especially if you're in a city where location, congressional district where there's a THUD subcommittee member in appropriations. We will really want to make as much of a push as we can. But and we'll do a whole push in the Senate as well. So lots going on there. One other quick thing is, thank you everybody for the quick turnaround around the shutdown survey that we did. We got that to HUD the first morning that right after the shutdown, and that became pivotal in their conversation. And essentially, they said they were going to stop doing other things such as trainings and site reviews to concentrate on getting funding out for the local groups. So high impact again, and the fact that you all acted quickly was really, really helpful. And we got a note of appreciation from Sarah Jarek on this as well. And I think we should all feel good about that in a trying circumstance. So with that note, and have we gotten David Young yet?
David Young is here.
Oh, excellent. All right, good. So we've been doing a lot of work on client management systems and on technology. David is the head of our technology committee. He's now becoming a regular on our calls. David, I know you've got stuff both on the survey that Housing Action Illinois is doing and on data standardization. So let me turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Bruce. And before I get started, I'd also like to thank you and your team for the survey. It definitely had a result. Housing Action Illinois, as you know, is an intermediary, and just the other day, our contract was approved and fully funded, so we can now draw down on our requisitions, and so we appreciate your work on that. That's been very helpful.
This is great. Thank you for hearing. That's so great to hear. It's such a disaster. I'm so glad to hear that.
Certainly, certainly. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I, as Bruce mentioned, do want to give a quick update regarding the comprehensive guide for client management systems, and then would also like to take a moment today to talk about data standardization. So first of all, regarding the comprehensive guide for client management systems, as I reported a couple of weeks ago, we are working diligently to compile all of the information. We're working with our marketing and communications team here at Housing Action Illinois to compile all of that information into a format that is clear and user-friendly. The previous guide that we published in 2016, many of you will remember, was available in PDF format online and also as a hard copy published material. And this year, we're only going to release the document online. So we're working with our team to format that so that it is very user-friendly for you. We are aware that organizations need this information so that they can make a decision soon on what client management system they're going to use. And so we are working as quickly as possible to get that out. Our goal has been to have something out, as close to the end of February as possible, and that's what we're still shooting for. But again, just counter that with making sure that we are taking the time to put out a product that is going to be very useful for the industry, as opposed to putting out something at the end of February, but it's not useful at all. So that's what we are working on. Some of the delays that we've had in getting all of this information formatted has been, we wanted to include as many of the publicly available client management systems as possible, so that there would be information for the industry on all of that universe. And there have been some client management systems that were, very late in getting back to us, or it was difficult to schedule the interview/demonstration. And so that has caused some delays, and we're trying to make that time up. We expect that we will cover 11 publicly available client management systems. This is less than the 17 that we covered in the previous guide, and that's because there are a couple of systems that were in the previous guide that met the HUD ARM requirements that no longer meet that requirement. And there are also just a couple of client management systems that are no longer operating compared to where they were in 2016. So again, we are working diligently to get this out to you as soon as possible. We provided an email that if you have any questions, you are welcome to reach out to us now, and then also after the guide comes out, and that is cms@housingactionil.org. Again, that's cms@housingactionil.org. You can use that email address to ask us questions now, as well as to ask us questions once this document has been released. And again, as we have been doing, Once we are ready to release this document, we will make sure that we participate in a upcoming leaders call so that we can go over how this is set up, what's there, and answer any questions that people have as part of a leaders call. And if it's all right with you, Bruce, I'm just going to go right into talking about data standardization.
Yes.
So in 2017, at the NHRC Summit in Washington, D.C., we had a very robust discussion about data standardization. And most of you that are in our industry know that we have not, as an industry, agreed on what are all of the data points that we want to use. And this is a very important discussion because when we are explaining the impact and the outcomes that we have, it's important that we are all using the same data points. This will go a long way towards us being able to show how important our work is when it comes to foreclosure, when it comes to other types of default, when it comes to mortgage originations. So if we are able to put those things in place, it will become very beneficial. So Bruce formed a data standardization committee and asked me to chair that committee, and we started working in 2017 on, how should we go about creating an information standard or a data standard, and then making sure that that would be available to everyone in our industry. At the same time that we were doing this, we also learned that Freddie Mac and HUD were in the process of creating a data standard for the 9902 form in an entity called MISMO, which is the Mortgage Industry Standards Management Organization. And so if you're not familiar with MISMO, MISMO was established by the Mortgage Bankers Association to be a data standard that those in the mortgage originations and mortgage servicing could use to make sure that all of these different systems could talk to each other. So as part of this MISMO process, Freddie Mac and HUD worked together to get the 9902 approved as a MISMO data standard. So with the 9902 moving in that direction, it seemed to us that we should also look at MISMO and use MISMO in order to determine our data standards. Now, currently, MISMO has over 4,500 data standards. So it means that there's a lot of information to look through to determine what is relevant to our industry and what is not. And then also to determine what is missing from MISMO that we would like to see. So we are looking to find a researcher, to find resources so that we can hire a researcher that could then look through MISMO, determine what is currently there that is relevant to us, that we have the ability to make suggestions to MISMO on what other things that we would like to see, and then get those things approved. And once we are able to do that, then we can reach out to client management systems, for example, and say, these are the data standards that we have put in place. We would like to see client management systems adopt these data standards, and this will make it a lot easier for us to then have conversations between us and the mortgage industry, between us and HUD, and better share our impacts and outcomes. So those are a number of things that we are working on. We wanted to just give you a quick update on what's happening, and we will provide more information as we go forward. We will also be reaching out to housing counseling organizations to get some additional feedback regarding data standards. But this is a pretty exciting opportunity for us because we will be able to speak as with one voice as to what those data standards should be and how to move forward with putting that in place. So I will turn that back over to Bruce.
And part of the value here is it really drags us into the 21st century and makes us on the same level plane with other technology providers in the financial services field. So the MISMO is what Fannie and Freddie are doing, what all the major banks and lenders are doing, what the servicers are using, what appraisers are using. This is creating a standard that we will be a part of as well. And that value proposition means then that we are able to do things technologically that will keep us apace and maybe even help lead in some of the work we do. So if this is an area that you're really interested in and want to do a deep dive, reach out to David or me. We're going to need to have a team of people who help us think through sort of what these data standards look like and what will be, as David puts it, what the standard is that we can expect from technology providers that we deal with. So exciting stuff. For those that are really into it, please let us know. Thanks, David, and thank you for all the good work you're doing here. So one issue that has really come up in these calls has been this question about HCO coming to an end May 31st. It was March 31st. They pushed it back to May 31st. And I've been hearing from a number of you with deep concerns about why May 31st. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a 3 questions survey to figure out if this is an issue that NHRC should work on. I mean, to be quite frank, we got a lot of things we're doing out here, and it's always a question of priorities. And what we're really trying to figure out is if this is an important one for a major segment of our community. We know that not everybody uses HCO, not a problem, but if you're an HCO user or you're part of a network where there are HCO users, we're really going to ask, should we take this on as an issue, and then what the impact is to your organization. And so, and you could say, yeah, you got other things you need to worry about. Let's not do that. And you could say, yes, it's important, and we'll give you a chance to weigh in on all this. What I've been hearing is, why May 31st? It presents a number of problems for the counseling agencies. So one is it doesn't mesh with the federal reporting timeline. So the idea would be that we would recommend it goes through September 30th. That way you'd still have a full year that you could do on HCO. There's a second set of issues around the fact that it's a really busy time for housing counseling agencies, that this is the spring when many people are looking to become homeowners, and it's particularly demanding on our work. And for us then to have all the technology and training challenges that come with this, that's a difficult problem. And the third one is that Fannie has favored Launchpad as the place where people would move to next, and is paying for the transfer of data from HCO to Launchpad. But Launchpad really has just started in January. It's not completely built out. Obviously, it's got a lot of capacity right now, but we all know that technology startups are always a learning experience, and there'll always be hiccups. And the idea that we now suddenly, that Launchpad now has to absorb, train, and onboard several hundred HCO users by May 31st, and that the local groups have to figure out that this is the right solution for them and train their staff. All of that is asking a lot. So so what we'd like to do is queue up the survey and the poll, and ask people to vote. There'll be 3 questions, and we'll just do each one consecutively. And again, it's fine if you're feeling like this is not the most important issue to work on. We're really trying to make a sense of. I'll just add one more quick sentence, which is, so if there's strong support for doing something moving forward, we would do a sign-on letter. We'll circulate it. You'll have a chance to wordsmith it if you feel like there's some changes to be done, but ask groups to sign on and get something out by next week. So the letter could hopefully go out by the end of this week, and then we will close it next week so that it will be quickly into the system. That letter would go to Fannie Mae, but we'd also give it to FHFA and to HUD as parties that have an interest and concern in this. So with that quick note, Melody, do you want to start the poll?
Thank you, Bruce. So everyone, I'm going to present 3 questions in order on the screen. I just ask that you please submit your vote. I'll leave each question on the screen for 30 seconds. And the first one is coming up now. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the next question.
So I'll just read it out loud so that everybody can tell what's going on. I know not everybody's on a computer. Between 1 and 5, how disruptive is it to your agency that HCO is coming to an end May 31st? And 1 is not disruptive at all, 2 is disruptive, 3 is disruptive and causing challenges to our work, 4 is potentially damaging to our programmatic operations, and 5, damaging to our programmatic operations.
I'll leave this question up a bit longer since there's multiple choices. Okay, thank you, everyone. And then we're going to the last question.
Do you feel confident we'll know enough to choose a replacement CMS by May? Yes or no?
And closing.
So can we see the results?
Okay, so
that's question number 3. So it sounds like 61% feel that they are not confident that they will know enough to make the decision by May, and 39% feel they are. Okay.
Okay, one moment. I'll be going back to the second question, sharing results.
Okay, so 29% said it would not be disruptive at all, so that's good. 15% said disruptive, 24% disruptive and causing challenges to our work, 22% potentially damaging to our programmatic operations, and 11% damaging to our programmatic operations. Wow. And can you tell how many people actually voted on that?
I cannot, no.
Okay, all right, so we'll figure that out. Okay, good. And then number 1, the big question. should NHRC request that Fannie Mae extend the HCO termination deadline? 85% said yes, 15% said no. Okay, so we'll put together a sign-on letter and get it out today or tomorrow. And if you got some feedback about wording it, I would love to hear that as well. But people can sign on onto the principle as soon as we get it out, and we'll do it through SurveyMonkey. It will be the usual thing. But thank you, everybody. Very helpful. And actually want to just also give a shout out to the number of people who've been emailing me about the HCO question. This has been very, very helpful on this as well. Okay, so let's keep rolling. And it looks like we're running a little bit behind, so this call will go after the usual hour, and we'll probably go an extra 10 or 15 minutes. So moving on to expanding the Fair Housing Act, and in our environment, we've always worried about fair housing and how to protect it, so it's pretty exciting that there's some thinking about how to expand it. And we have Jorge Soto from the National Fair Housing Alliance, and we have G2 Verado from Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals, or VAREP. So Jorge, can you start us off?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to share what I know about what's going on in this space with folks on the call. So I'll just try and be brief since we're running behind. So folks might be aware that, and we talked about this before, I think on a previous call when I was on, but the Fair Housing Act, for several years now, organizations like the National Fair Housing Alliance have been looking to expand protections under the Act to include a number of different protected classes, including sexual orientation, gender identity, and as well as source of income protections and veteran status most recently. And so in the past Congress, Senators Tim Kaine and Orrin Hatch put together a bipartisan bill to add source of income protections and veteran status. And the source of income protection is especially important because one of the major barriers to the use of a housing voucher and really being able to have choice and mobility through the use of that voucher is the discrimination that voucher holding families experience when they try and apply for a house, try and apply for an apartment using a housing choice voucher. This is often a barrier that is, something that the victim of that kind of discrimination can't really do much about because most places do not protect against that kind of discrimination. But it's really critical to ensuring that this investment in people's lives in stable and affordable housing so that they can better themselves and move on to more opportunity and do well for their families is rendered ineffective for oftentimes the folks who need it the most, and that includes people with disabilities, the elderly, people of color, and other types of intersectionality that exist there. And source of income is not just a protection against discrimination on the basis of someone using a housing choice voucher. It's also protecting people who use other lawful sources of income, such as alimony, child support, second jobs, or anything that is a legal source of income that a landlord could just decide to say, well, we're not going to consider that as part of the application, and you can't live here because you don't make enough money, or you can't pay. So that really, the source of income protection gets at the heart of those kinds of issues as well, and in particular, that helps families with children, and especially single mothers to rely on other lawful income to support themselves and pay for housing.
Jorge, you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay. So, the protection is especially important for a number of different communities. We're excited to continue work on this bill in this next Congress. Senator Tim Kaine is still interested in sponsoring the legislation, but unfortunately, Senator Orrin Hatch has retired, and so we need to find a Republican to carry the mantle into this Congress on this particular issue. And we have some thoughts, but we want to be thoughtful and strategic about how we engage Republican offices on this bill, because there is a lot to be lost in the Fair Housing Act that we risk bringing up should the statute be opened up in some form or fashion. So the National Fair Housing Alliance and other civil rights organizations are thinking through strategy to address the risks that any kind of bill would present, and also identify kind of like scenario-based responses to any kind of situation where legislation might get out of hand, and we do run the risk of actually losing existing protections because the act has been opened up. That requires a lot of congressional education to make sure that offices that are very excited to work on this are aware of the risks that they put the Fair Housing Act in when they try and open it up, and so that is going to be a big part of the National Fair Housing Alliance's work in the coming months to kind of educate these new offices and offices with new staff members on the key things that we want to protect and prevent from happening should the Fair Housing Act actually be successfully expanded. I think I'll stop there and give it over to G2.
Thanks a lot, Jose, and thanks also, Bruce, for asking VA Rep to be part of this call. I am G2 Barado. I'm the National Legislative Committee Chairman for VA Rep, and I just want to add a few extra points of interest that VA Rep has. VA Rep has in this legislation, and VA Rep's aware of indiscriminate discrimination. We call it sly discrimination against veterans who attempt their use their HUD-VASH vouchers. And all too often, a landlord essentially states, we don't accept those, meaning the HUD-VASH voucher. However, when you go into a deeper dive into the rejection, you'll find often that it centers on unfounded fears that a veteran, it may be a combat veteran who's trying to reintegrate into society and has rated disabilities of possibly TBI or PTSD. And these things begin to complicate the use of the HUD-VASH voucher and gives the landlord an opportunity. Well, it opens an opportunity for the landlord to begin to emotionally diagnose his applicant. Sometimes the landlord often thanks the veteran for his or her service, but then as the dialogue grows and the veteran mentions that he or she is working through an emotional anxiety reintegration scenario, by some unimaginable revelation, the landlord discovers that he, no longer has that home available. The home just got rented to another person and a whole host of other things. Now, you all know that veterans are not a protected class in most states. I believe Illinois is one of them where they are protected. So that's to the question on the HUD-VASH. To the question of affordable and sustainable home ownership, VA Rep conducted a nationwide survey on this subject, and it's undisputed that there's about 22 million veterans and about 1.4 million active duty service members. And yet less than 10% of us, and I am a retired Air Force veteran disabled, use our VA home buying benefits. Now, the VA Rep surveys focus was to try and understand why the usage of the VA home loan is so abysmally low. And while the survey is still in progress, what we can tell you is what we've discovered is that more than half of the properties that are offered for sale through the industry, through the real estate industry, more than half of them are not offered to buyers using their VA benefits. In other words, my industry and equally true and sad, the lending industry are woefully poor at being better advocates of the benefits we earn wearing the uniform. And additionally, VA Reps aware that many in both the real estate and the lending industry discriminate against veterans who refuse to give up their rights to use their real estate transaction with a loan product other than the VA loan. In other words, a source of money, if that source of money is going to be a VA loan, the applicant, the buyer, is being told, we don't want you to use that source of income. If you can find money under a tree, in a mattress, some other form of financing, we'll take you on. That's just extremely disconcerting to us. Now, you all probably know that in 2012, DOJ reported an increase in complaints regarding discrimination against classes not protected by federal housing, including an increase in complaints by veterans. So VA Rep is very, very interested in helping this bill, proposed bill that Jorge mentioned. Did get launched last year. It's got to get a new start this year. But we're very interested in this. We're very focused on helping this make its way onto the floor and then through passage, and of course very sensitive to all the underlying unintended consequences that such integration, protected integration, might bring with it. So back to you, Bruce.
Perfect, very helpful. And obviously the VA loans are zero down payment loans, and they've actually got a strong history of performing well. So pretty disturbing that it's not as widely used as it could be. It strikes me that as counselors out in the field, you may be hearing stories of how veterans or low-income people are discriminated against that might be valuable in the lobbying effort, and we should elevate those to VAREP and to VA Rep and to NAFA as tools. And certainly at the point where there's actual legislation, we'd be interested in doing some kind of a sign-on letter to be supportive as well. I know that our counselors are due here and see about things like this. Are there any other action steps we should be thinking about?
Well, only that VA Rep's convinced that every eligible veteran should be able to confidently obtain shelter through either the use of a HUD-BASH program or, if qualified and eligible, successfully purchasing a home using the financial instrument of their choice that they've earned, that being the VA home loan.
Excellent. Thank you both for your good work, and let's stay in touch as you get sponsors that are moving forward. Good. So let's move quickly on to the client management system. And so we've got Kevin Porter from Alliance Credit Counseling. They've had a CMS system that's been in place for a long time, the Counseling Navigator CMS. Kevin, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Okay, good. And we're going to transfer the presentation over to you so you could use your screen.
Great.
There we go. Give us just a second. Bang.
Okay, hopefully the
yes.
resolution on my screen's kind of high. You may need to zoom in a little bit to see the windows. So let me start with the presentation. Counseling Navigator has been in use for, well, it's now in its 21st year. We have lots of features. It's been used to work with more than 500,000 clients. We developed it in-house, and it has continuous development. It features an integrated expert counseling system to guide the counselor through all the counseling steps, all the counseling options, and to build a action plan that is extensive and fully personalized. There are more unique advantages. It's a genuine computer application. It runs on Windows and Mac. It is not a web-based program. So it can have features that simply aren't available in a browser. It takes fewer clicks to use. It's easier to learn. You can have multiple windows open at the same time. It has a built-in word processor. It generates documents merging with the client data automatically. It stores documents, and it has a library of documents. It includes the multi-user calendar, task management, knowledge base of all the features that are built in, and it has unlimited recording capability. And there's even more unique advantages. It has CRM functions such as integrated email, personalized campaigns, many more options that you can take advantage of. It allows for pre-counseling web data capture for any type of client. It integrates with a home buyer education course and 5 other courses that we provide to go with it, which include, a credit improvement course, budgeting, and payday loans, and a couple others. It integrates directly with your website, and it will automatically roll up any leads that come in from your website into your into the CMS so that you can use it, and you'll be notified immediately. We have a version that integrates with your phone system and web analytics so that you can track conversions to whatever you want to assign, whether or not they're signing up for a course or becoming a pre-purchase client, how they found you, and things like that. Normally, this takes about an hour to an hour and a half to present this, so I'm going very fast. It has integrated credit card processing to use with your merchant account. As I mentioned, it actually supports payday loans, especially in Florida, Texas, and others where they have very supportive payday loan laws. It can support debt management program clients with our services, so we can team with you subject to federal and state regulations for your long-term clients that need to reduce their debt and can take advantage of the lower interest rates and other advantages on a debt management program. It allows a free homebuyer education course for pre-purchase clients, which you don't have to issue the certificate immediately, or you can. Once you issue the certificate, then that it will need to be used. Either one of the credits that we offer, as we have free courses or a credit for courses based on each paid user per month. So that can help offset some of your costs that you have now, perhaps, that will allow you to offset the client cost, the licensing cost for the program. We built this system to support the counseling process and enforcement and delivery of all the counseling deliverables. It's compliant with HUD and other regulatory compliance. It has immense reporting capability, and it's very simple. I'll demo that. And we believe in measuring things so that you can improve it. So when we started developing the system, we looked at the typical financial counseling process, which frequently is either due to distress or because they have a goal. And so we expanded that so that as the process goes through, we have a process map that is used, and then it expands even further to look at individual cases of either financial distress or you have financial goals like you want to buy a house. And it provides all the counseling that's necessary right in the system to walk a counselor through everything that needs to be done with these clients. And let me go into the system so I can show you that. This is hide some of these windows. This is the multi-windowing environment. We've got 2 client windows open, the referral source file that keeps track of how you get referrals, the library documents, all the activity records that are recorded in the system. In this case, we have 5 million of them in our own system. And so we start off with collecting data from someone. It can be used for someone over the phone, or if you're working in person. It does address validation and lookup, and if you type it in and it doesn't have it looked up, you can go right to click this button here. It looks up the address validation, changes place to place, adds in the 4-digit zip, looks up the FIPS code for the county and the county lookup, and we're going to add census tract data in the future. As you enter data, you don't have to worry about capitalization. It capitalizes the first letter in most cases, and there are exceptions to it. It can track, like I said, with integration, it can look at phone calls that have come in related to that client. Once you've collected that information, you go to define their situation. You clarify what their concerns are, what the causes are of those concerns, what kinds of debt and delinquency they might have, and then identify their goals. Once you've collected that information, you go to an analysis. You collect all the demographics. You collect assets and liabilities, which are part of evaluating their financial situation. You collect their income, and there's plenty of sources of income options there. You collect their monthly expenses, and then you go to a diagnostic page where it does calculations about their budget, all the typical financial ratios. You go through a root cause review if it's necessary. And we have a relevancy engine built in that looks at all the strategies that could be applied to this situation, ranks them in order of how it might apply, and then the counselor can suggest to include those by clicking these buttons or these check boxes. So once they do that, they go to the next step, which is to present all the client's options. As you go through the client's options, you'll click on one of the strategies, and it presents a basic description, the advantages, the disadvantages, and the actions and resources, which typically has a lot more in it than the other fields. And so the counselor can deliver all these things. Once they've done that, they check this box beside it to indicate that they've actually delivered that information to the client. And that will check this box under the review column automatically, so that it is creating an audit trail for the counseling that you're delivering. And you can go through all of those, any of those, only 2 or 3 is applicable. You discuss each one of them with the client. You might discuss other strategies. Then you select some with a client's input. They decide, with perhaps your encouragement, which ones they want to implement in their plan. Then you go to the plan, and the ones that are selected as part of the plan show up here. So each one of those has steps in it as well, and as those are delivered by the counselor, they check off the boxes. They can put personalized notes to go in with it that will show up on the action plan. You can track activities and set target dates, both for you to call them back or for them to complete the steps. And then you go through the rest of the items. And once you've done that, you're ready to send them an action plan. And there's lots of other options that you can go through. The system has the ability to track all the changes that are made within the system. It keeps a log of all of that. And then it also shows documents. And I recently installed a new version of the operating software. Normally, you'd see a preview of the document in this blank area. So there's a reason to get software that is frequently updated. But what you can do is double click on the document. And in this case, this was their home buyer action plan. And this was created as a result of what was done in their home buyer education course, which frankly, the counselor didn't have to be involved at this point. And it shows all the typical net worth, debt to income ratios, how your budget is divided up, and how it compares to the consumer price index. And then it shows the summaries, the expenses, and you'll see in a minute all these items that are included. It's presented to the consumer so they know what data to put into each of those fields. And then part of the course, our home buyer education course, includes the ability for them to choose optional income and expense strategies to increase their cash availability or reduce their cash outflow. And so these are the ones that were input by a consumer, although it's an example that we put in place. And it also includes all the HUD required documents. And it also privacy policy and a glossary so that they can become more familiar and refresh their memory from either the course or look at these terms that are important for them to understand. And there's about 16 pages of glossary. So another thing that you can do is go look directly at their home buyer education course. So when you double click, I'll go back to that because I did it kind of fast. When you go into this tab, which at this point refers to electronic learning, you double click it, it takes you into the course that they completed. And in the money module, it collects the assets, the liabilities, their expenses. It introduces them to the financial analysis, does all the ratios, presents the other factors that are involved, shows them their net worth, etc., and the CPI comparison. And then it goes into money management. And now there's lots of videos included in the course. And then, well, let me go to, you look at income strategies, so the consumer can look at all these strategies and check off the ones they want included. And then those become tactics that get included in the plan. And they can make notes here about what they're going to do when it's fresh in their mind about what they've done. Same thing happens with expense strategies. If this were a distressed mortgage client, they'd be able to look at this, or if they're renting consider the options they have. And again, they just check off the boxes they want to see. It presents them as items that they can make notes and put in numbers to reflect what they think they can reduce their expenses for. And then it does a budget evaluation comparing their original budget to the revised and the difference that's there. It goes through, credit training, all the typical mortgage training, how to shop for a home, keeping your home, generating the certificate. It tracks all of your scores that you've taken through there, does a survey, lets you print the action plan, and then you can contact the counselor and get your certificate in most cases, which is what they want to get. And if you're like most agencies, a lot of these are coming to you, they're all ready to buy the house. But if you have a pre-purchase client, then you can have them go through this course. And as long as you don't issue the certificate, it doesn't cost you anything. So once you've got a client online and doing that, you can return to the system and do all the things that are needful, and you can revise action plans and go on from there. We have full HUD compliance. The electronic reporting is required, does all the demographics, it does timekeeping and action delivery for the clients. Again, extensive action plan creation capabilities and tracking of counseling deliverables. As we do debt management programs, we also have a lot of compliance requirements in different states. So we have very detailed requirements built into the system. But aside from that, all documents are produced in the system and linked to the client. It has full record keeping of contacts, activities, time. There's very flexible reporting. It does pop warnings, reminders, task management, which can be assigned to someone else in the system as need be. And then we have computer-based training to train you on the system. The documentation is built into the system on how to use it. We can provide remote access support, and of course, we're going to do updates and further development as we go. In the knowledge base, there are about 320 documents that you can review. Not all of those apply to housing, but you can also build, add to this. So if you wanted to add more counseling strategies and options, you can author them, put them into the knowledge base. They integrate with the counseling delivery, and they'll show up as things for your counselors to do if you have a special program. And again, that helps with training, auditing, assuring compliance. You're going to have a lot fewer exceptions and do-overs because you have everything right in front of the counselor. We also have a help desk portal, and again, the training that I mentioned before. And let me show you. There is a built-in help system as well that will show you all of the items in the counseling or in the knowledge base. So if you want to look up something, you can search, or you can look at all the information that goes in there. This is the same data that you would read within the system, but it's a convenient way for someone to review it without having to go into the system if you want them to be familiar with it before using it. You can create your own documents to go in the library that are customized. It has the ability to integrate your own logo and all those things into it. So you just paste them in there. And also in the staff tab here, excuse me, the personnel tab, you can put in their signature, which is automatically integrated to any mail merge documents, and that's mail merge for email or printed mail. And if it's integrated with your phone system, you can assign what queues they're able to take calls from, those kinds of things. Then one other thing you can do, how are we doing on time?
We're kind of running out of time, and I know there's some
Okay.
questions in the queue as well. So if there's a quick wrap up, that would be great.
Okay, so you can find people in the system by just simply typing their name up here, and it finds all the John Does that we have in the system in this case. You can also, if you have their client ID, their social, if you have their phone number, anything that you want programmed to query for, we can put in that field and you can use it to find clients. So it's a very simple way to find them. And then the reporting capability is extremely easy. If you want to build your own custom report, and there's dozens of reports that are already built into it, but if you wanted to build your own report, it's simply drag and drop. And you can also create calculated fields, which include the first name plus the last name as an example. And so then you can preview the report, and it shows all the data very easily, very quickly. You can build any number of reports like this. You can also export these reports to a disk file, to HTML, and or any printed or semi-print like a PDF. And there are tons of other features, and I'd be happy to demo more of it to you in another demo. So let's get to the questions.
So I know one question that everybody will ask to really start off early is what does it cost?
The primary system is $25 per user per month, and that includes a credit for one homebuyer education course per month for each user. So if you had 5 users, that's 5 courses. It can help offset some of the costs that you have. I wouldn't recommend that you take referrals from other systems by any means, but if you have that option, this is a way to soften the blow of moving from a free product to a paid product.
And if you're doing more than one home buyer education credit, so is that per person, or is that just how does that work?
We charge $25 for the course, and that's whether it's a single person or both, and you can charge whatever you want to for it. So if you're charging $100 for the home buyer course for each person,
Right. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go quickly to questions, and we'll hit just a few. We won't do everything, but what have you got?
Sure. So the first one is, what is the name of the CMS? Someone missed it.
It's Counseling Navigator.
Thank you. The next question is, how will this interface with the HUD 9902 reporting?
There are two ways to get the reporting. Normally, it's done electronically, and you run the process, you check all of the client's data. There's a review process to make sure somebody hasn't left out, a demographic choice or some other requirement. And once that review is completed, then you can press a button and it gets filed, basically. The other option is to print the data to the screen, because if you're, in some cases, reporting to an intermediary instead of directly to HUD, you can get the same data that way, and it presents it in a tabular format.
Okay, thank you. Those were all the questions.
Okay, great. Excellent. We'll circulate again your contact information when we send the email out after the event, so people can follow up with you. And if you want to schedule a webinar, or however you else want to do it, that's fine. But thanks, Kevin, and we'll field any questions your way.
Thank you.
Some more. Sounds good. Okay, thanks everybody. Now, quickly before we go, here's very cool. This is the list of the counseling agencies that joined last year. So 40 new agencies. We were at 119 at the beginning of the year. We're now at 159. That minuses a few agencies that have closed, but we grew by almost a third in the last year. So that's pretty exciting. Hats off, and thank you so much to everybody who's jumped on the bandwagon. If you haven't, please do it. There's lots we're doing, and we really need your support. This is what allows us to be independent and also do the advocacy work that we do that isn't as easily funded by other sources. So the next where we are on the membership, our credit report discount has been working beautifully. So the good news is that people are using it, and it's really added to our field. I've been pretty pleased with what I've heard so far with people's experiences. We'll probably do a push out to the broader housing counseling community this spring sometime to bring some more groups in. But certainly, if you are a member and you're not using it now, please let me know. It's easy for you to get signed up. If you're already using Credco, and we have, and if you're not, there's an application process that we can be helpful on, and we'll get you the information to move forward. But the real thing to join is to support the work that we do and keep us going. It's become a very important part of our budget. So next call will be on February 21st, and we're working on what the content will be. And then on March 7th, we'll have a call that'll be a deeper dive in our advocacy work. Melody's going to take the lead. Ellie's going to work on some of this as well, and it'll be really a strategy advocacy program about how we can affect change in Congress, and especially in our funding levels. So kind of nuts and bolts, very helpful stuff, I'm sure. And interesting also because this will be the first leaders call where I won't be on that particular call. I'll be flying, but we've got such an excellent staff now. I'm thrilled to say that they'll do this without me, and I'm sure it'll be pretty interesting for everybody. So with that note, we will talk with you again in 2 weeks. Looking out for the HCO letter, sign-on letter that's going to come out shortly, and we'll have plenty more to do. Certainly reach out to Melody if you want to work with your House and Senate representatives on the housing counseling funding. Thanks, everybody. Bye.